Hello, everybody. It's Stephen and Walter here for another episode of So Chatty, episode number 174 for Friday, February the 14th, Valentine's Day. Bah, humbug. What you get me for Valentine's Day?
Nothing.
Oh, the same as last year. Yeah, nothing says I love you like nothing. Yep. Anyways, it's a whole lot of crap. But anyways, actually on Saturday or on Sunday on Stephen and Walter Live, we're going to be talking about St. Valentine's Day and things like that too. So anyways, I hope if you're expecting something on Valentine's Day, you get what you're expecting. If you don't, too bad. Okay, so let's take a look first of all what I've been working on. All right, you all know the story of the pattern I've been writing for a while called Cornered Stars. That's what I call it, and how my first version of it had one little piece that was screwed up the wrong way, so instead of looking like stars, it looked like sailboats on the corners. So I decided to redo the whole quilt. Yes, I know, and I already explained it on Idiot Quilter about trying to rip out those pieces, and it was going to be more bother than it was worth. So I made a second version of it correctly, and I also changed my color scheme slightly, and here it be. So there it is. Now that's just the top. I haven't put it on Lucy yet and quilted or anything. I actually kind of like my second color scheme better than my first, because I really think you can see a secondary pattern emerging out of this more clearly than you could in the other one. In fact, this quilt, the way it's right now looking, and this was not, of course, in my design, because I didn't think of this until after I saw it on my design board, it looks like it's a quilt that's been done on point. It's not, but it's got that look to it. So anyways, I'm very pleased with it. His nibshit turned around and looked at it with an eagle eye, can't find any mistakes, and he won't this time. Because this time, with each block I made, I triple checked to make sure all of my half square triangles were going in the right direction, in the right place. So, yeah, live and learn. Anyways, when will this pattern become available to you? Not for a while. I think I'm going to release the pattern on the day of my Idiot Quilter retreat, which will not be until the 26th of April. So you'll just have to wait till then. Unless for some reason I can't wait and then I put it up and away we go. But anyways, there it is. Okay, let's come back to us. What does Walter have to show?
I have a shirt on there, but I didn't bring it down.
And you showed it last week on the live, and have you done anything on it since?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so that's why you're not going to see it. Maybe you'll see it on Sunday. Maybe not.
Well, Russ is having a sew day on Sunday.
Yes, he is.
Okay, so
yes.
I'll probably be working on it then.
And that's a good segue into announcements for this week. And as Walter's already said, Russ of Quilt Meets World is having another one of his sew days, his sewing shenanigans. If you're on his mailing list, you've already gotten that notice for it, but it's also in his vlog from Wednesday. He's got the link there as well. And I think he mentioned on that vlog too, he'd be sending out a reminder too to anybody on the mailing list. And is there something that's more important to look at over in the back behind you, or what?
Suddenly,
Squirrel? Somebody tapping you on the shoulder?
No.
Someplace you have to be.
No,
sorry if I'm eating up your valuable time. Yeah. Okay, so yeah, we had sewing with Stephanie and Stephen. Without Stephanie, Stephanie had a family situation happen on Wednesday that meant that she could not make it. So it was just me and everybody else on here. Hopefully she will be back next week for those of you that are missing her. And I know you probably are. We do have a pop-up sew day coming up, not for a while, but probably you can pencil this in. It isn't written in stone yet, but it's pretty close to being in stone. And that will be Saturday, March the 8th, because Walter has a sew day he's going to, unless they change it. So whatever. But there will be the week before, I will put out all the information about it as I usually do and everything. But just, tentatively, March the 8th is going to be the next pop-up sew day. I've already mentioned Russ's sewing shenanigans on Sunday, And yeah, down the road, the retreat, the Idiot Quilter Retreat. Again, details will be coming in another month, but I've got, as I've already mentioned before, I've got my speakers lined up. I'm working on my panel discussion and who's going to be on that. And yeah, so things are coming together very nicely with it all. And so yeah, that's going to be actually on Saturday, April the 26th. And I will be putting out information about that and how to register and all those kind of things about 2 weeks before that date. So early April, everything will come out about that. Okay, so what are we working on this week? All right, we're starting a new series. We're doing an In the Hoop quilted patchwork bag. This pattern comes from, and let me see if I can find the pattern up here for you. Oh, no, it's in that. Just by me, talk amongst yourselves.
Did you show that on your?
Yeah, I did.
Yeah. Okay.
Yeah. Every time you ask me this question. Good God. Okay. See, showing.
Yeah. Okay.
See, got it. Okay, it's fine. All right. So this is the Quilted Patchwork Handbag by Sweet Pea. Sweet Pea, I've done some of their patterns before. I've done a lot of their patterns actually before. And out of all of the sites that I've been to when it comes to in the hoop bags and purses and clutches, Sweet Pea, I think, offers pretty much the best selection in them. Somebody actually the other day, and I can't remember the site, put me onto a new one. They had some interesting bags too, but expensive for the files. So one thing about Sweet Pea, their files, even at full price, do not tend to be too bad price-wise. I think this one right now is about $18 American, or that might have been Canadian. But I got it for 50% off at the time that I bought it. And they have sales all the time. If you happen to be interested in this pattern, I have put the link for it in the show notes so you can check that out. But our plan is we're going to take you through this and how to do it in the hoop. And we're both going to do one, kind of like on the way we did the Kindred Creatures wall hanging. Walter, though, has never really done, right? You've never done one of these in the hoop.
No.
Walter's made lots of tote bags before, but he's never done one in the hoop. And in this series, as time goes by, Walter may be making another one in the way he does it, a fancy bag, and I'll be following his directions for that. But in the first one we're doing, it's this one. So you can see it's a great bag if you have somebody who's a quilter or sewer and you want to give it to them as a gift, because it is what it says. It's all patchwork. Just like you laid down pieces of fabric that you had, sewed them all together, and then did a nice decorative stitch around the seams. Well, this machine does this all for you. Plus, it does all the quilting because each of the panels are quilted by the machine. And there's a lot of versatility here in what you pick for fabrics and threads and how you handle this. And I'm going to show you a couple of finished examples that come from one of my subscribers, Nancy Ryan, who many of you may know from Sewing with Stephanie and Stephen because she's a regular on there. And she does some really beautiful bags. And when I saw her versions of this pattern, I asked her to send me a couple of pictures because they're so very nice, and they give you a real idea what you can do with this. Now we're going to take different approaches to this in our color schemes. Walter likes to be more subdued. I like to be bold and beautiful and in your face. So that will translate into the way we do the bags as well. But before we show you what fabrics we have picked and everything, we want to go through the pattern with you, because again, you don't always have to follow exactly what the patterns tell you. Now, one thing about Sweet Pea is they don't really tell you to get a lot of extra materials that you don't need. That's Robo upstairs. It's banging itself around there as it vacuums. OASD wants you to buy about 5 products when you need about 1 to that. And I can't help but think that they tried to say you're going to have a much better final product or result. I don't think so. I think it's just a way to sell more of their stuff. Sweet Pea doesn't really do that. which is kind of nice. Um, but let's go through the pattern. So the first thing you're going to find in the pattern is they break it down for you. There are 3 sizes. There is a 5x7, and there is a 6x10 and a 7x12. And with all of these sizes, it gives you the measurements for the fabric. Now, you can do these bags a lot of times with, fat quarters or scrap fabrics that you have laying around. So that's the best place to go and check. Check your stash before you go out, because it looks like there's an awful lot of fabric in this, but not really. Let's just break it down. First of all, I told you, oops, I don't want to go there. I told you there are 3 different sizes. We're going to be concentrating on the largest one, 7x12, and that will use the largest hoop in our machines, in our 550Es. It'll use what's called the 36B, which is, how big is the 36B? 11 by?
It's 7.9 inches wide, so 8 inches or whatever, by 14.
So 8x14. Okay, so the biggest one. But you have a variety here of sizes that you can do. And, your embroidery machine may not have as big a hoop as we have. So Sweet Pea, that's one of the things about Sweet Pea. All of their designs cover a wide variety of hoop sizes. So, you can do them in almost any machine that you might own, with the exception of a machine that might only do 4x4. Because, but then who's ever seen a tote bag that's 4x4? What's that, a doll bag? So if we look, since we're going to be doing the 7x12, we'll look in the 7x12 hoop area. And there is a center panel, a left side panel, a right side panel. And you have to double each one of these, because there's a front to the bag and a back to the bag. They're exactly the same, but you have to make 2 center panels, 2 left side panels, and 2 right side panels. And it tells you here, you need 2. One for the front, one for the back. And here they list all the fabrics, and I think it comes out to about 11 in the center panel, and that's the biggest. And then it's 1, 2, 3, 4, 6 in both the left and the right. You don't necessarily have to have a unique fabric for every one of these, as you'll see when I show you the layout here for this. It's really up to you what you want to do, how many different colors or different types of fabric you want in your final bag. And they tell you what the approximate sizes of each piece. So if you like to pre-cut your fabric to make sure it's big enough to cover your placement lines that'll be put down, you can do that. I don't bother. I just look at it, see the placement line, and kind of cut a chunk out of the fabric. And, well, usually I get it right. There have been a few times where I haven't. But if you don't get it right and it's already stitched it and it didn't stitch it all the way down, don't rip it out. Just cut another bigger, same fabric, bigger piece, put it down, and do the stitch over again. It's not a problem with it. Don't be trying to rip it out, because you may take it out of your hoop, it may spring out of the hoop, or you might rip your stabilizer. It's not worth it. You just put another piece down on top of it. Nobody knows the difference. That's a tip. Okay. Have you ever had that problem?
Yeah, well, I haven't done applique that much.
Oh, that's right.
I have done it. I have done it before.
Okay. Well, let's just talk about doing applique. Just I take a few things for granted, and I shouldn't. This is in the hoop applique, which means that a placement line will be put down on your stabilizer. We'll talk about stabilizer in a minute for this. It'll stitch out a line. For your first piece, you take your first piece of fabric, you make sure it's bigger than the stitched out line, lay it on top, it stitches down a tack down line, and then you trim it around the edges so it's right up close to the stitch line without cutting the stitch line. And the best thing you can use for that are these. And if you've seen our videos about doing in the hoop for, like, Kindred Creatures, you know what these are. These are applique scissors. Now, there are different styles of applique scissors. These are the ones I like to use. They're called duckbill because of the shape, but they allow me to get right in close.
Yeah, if you hold it sideways, you notice that you hold it this way, you notice that the scissors are bent down, right? So that's so that you can get in behind the hoop, not under the hoop, but
without hitting
it. So you need a pair of scissors sort of like that.
Yeah. Yeah, like what Walter said. With that, I just take it for granted because I've been doing this for so many
I mean,
times.
I have another pair of scissors that aren't a duckbill, but they're curved down like this as well, and they're skinnier at the front. And oh yeah, these ones as well. And they're just like a normaler, more
I
normal pair
normaler.
of scissors. And I like using them, but
See,
everybody has their own.
I don't like using these. I like these ones better. And the reason I don't like these is because the points on them up here can get caught when you're stitching, trimming along, you come to a curve. If you're not careful, that point could get caught on the stitching line and cut it out. Whereas these ones have this, it's got points too,
Hmm.
but it has this little curve thing and it makes it a little, I think it makes it easier to get up
Well,
real close.
for me, I find the other ones get closer to the
Well,
stitching
you
point.
just do you.
I will.
The point is, use what works for you, what you're most comfortable with. I like these. So, okay, so you need that, and you need your fabric. You will eventually need thread as well. We'll come back to that too. But the other thing you're going to need is stabilizer and batting. Okay, it tells you here the rest of the bag. This bag is put together in pieces, just as the Kindred Creatures one was. We will be using our regular sewing machines to put the pieces together. And we'll show that when we get to that stage of it, not today. But they tell you here what you need for lining um, and for the bottom of the bag as well, because you're going to have to add fabric to the bottom of the bag. And we have ordered faux leather from Emmeline Bags. It's supposed to come tomorrow. We'll see. We've had a big snowstorm here. It's very nice right now, but there could be more. So it may get delayed. But anyways, we'll show it to you when it comes. So that's what we're going to use. And it'll be the first time I have ever used, well, I think it's your first time, isn't it? Using faux
Yeah.
leather. Um, I ordered some faux cork from Amazon. No, no. It was just, no. Pretty, but very thin. Um, so that's what we're going to use, but you don't have to use that. You can use
You can use
quilting cotton.
material, quilting
Yeah.
cotton, yeah.
Um,
I would probably interface it or something if you were using quilting cotton.
yeah, well, I was going to say what I do for the bottom of the tote bag in the hoop is I use that thicker, I use Soft and Stable actually, by Bags by Annie, but it is it's like is it Decobond?
No, soft and stable, isn't that sort of like a foam?
Yeah, it's like a foam.
Yeah, no, Decarbon doesn't have a foam.
Oh,
It just makes your bag stiff.
he says. Yeah. So that's what I use, but you can use whatever you want to use with that. And you'll see what we're talking about when we get to that part of the process as well. I don't know, do you have in mind what you're going to use in the bottom of your bag to do? Well,
It
it's very
depends on
helpful.
it depends on how the bottom works because like
Yeah,
when I
it's
do my
resin leather.
standard bags, when I do my standard bags, I have a flat area on my bag on the bottom, right? These bags that look like they don't really necessarily have a flat bottom.
And if it does, you have to have someone look at that.
If I have a flat
Yeah.
bottom, I usually put Peltex in the bottom, and it
Okay.
makes it Peltex is really stiff, so you don't your square bottom doesn't sag. But
Okay, this is on borderline. We're not purposely doing this
but on this particular item, I think that kind of support isn't necessarily needed.
because we're using the full leather.
Yeah, and also I don't really think it's probably got a really huge width to it.
Well, no, but it's not bad. On the
Yeah,
sides of
well, we'll
this, you've seen
see.
my
I
other
want to
ones.
see what it looks like. Yeah.
But anyways, well, I've used it in other ones now, but I've never used the faux leather, so we'll see how the faux leather, how substantial that is when we get that. You'll need some batting, because this is being quilted. All of those little pieces that are on there, and if you look here on the screen over here in this diagram with all the numbers, this is what the center panel looks like. This is the quilting that's on it. So you do want to have, beside your stabilizer, you want to also have batting. Now you can use what you normally would use if you were doing a quilt, or what I like to use is Battleizer. Battleizer is a product by Hoop Sisters, and you can get it on Amazon. You can get it from a Canadian outlet called monfil.ca, by Canadian, yes. Um, and it's of course you can buy Canadian, but it's by Hoop Sisters and an American company, so that screw that idea. Anyways, but it is a lower loft, and it's great if you want things to be flatter, like in wall hangings or placemats or table runners. I use it in these types of bags all the time. But you can use regular batting too, and I have used regular batting, and it works okay. You know, it's up to you. Let's see, anything else up there? Oh yes, the interfacing. They call for, I think they call it
So what are you using for stabilizer?
I am using no-show mesh.
Okay.
I was just seeing what they recommended. Have iron off you, that's optional stuff. Huh. Interesting. Oh, it may say right here. First step is slowing the batting down.
Cutaway stabilizer.
Well, that's no-show mesh.
Yeah, okay.
It's a cutaway stabilizer. No-show mesh is kind of like a woven, not a netting as per se. It's more of a fabric kind of a thing, but it permanently stays in whatever you're putting it in. Oftentimes it's used in clothing, in right? No-show mesh. Am I getting that mixed up with something?
Yeah, I use SF101.
No. I'm talking though if you were embroidering on a shirt, a pattern.
Oh,
and you didn't want to be scratchy against your skin.
Would do that, yeah.
Yeah. See, I know of that of which I speak. Anyways, that's what I'll be using, and we'll probably be using. Are you planning to use the same?
Yeah.
Yeah. Now you could use a tearaway. A tearaway will give your bag a slightly bit more body because it tends to be a little thicker. And since this is something you're probably not going to wash anyways, and because it's all going to get quilted, there isn't any need to actually pull a tearaway away from your stitching. Now, if you were going to wash it, then I wouldn't recommend the tearaway because it doesn't dissolve, but it will probably pill up, and it might make your stitches if it's been washed or something like that, might make them look a little wonky.
Yeah.
So I think the best choice is a no-show mesh with that.
Probably.
Yeah. Now they have a couple of optional things here. Iron-on fusible interfacing for the bottom of the bag. They say that's optional. That's when we were talking about using soft and stable or whatever. It's just to give a little bit more body to the bottom of your bag if you're going to be using quilting cotton.
Yeah.
And they say a magnetic clasp or fastener. That's if you want to close the bag at the top. I'm not going to put one of those in, I don't think. I've got some, but I don't know if I want to do that or not because it's a tote.
Mm-hmm.
And usually, totes, you want them pretty airy, but there's an option here for you to do that. And then they give you the finished dimensions. So the one we're making with the 7x12 hoop is 15 inches by almost 14 by 2 inches.
Yeah, see, it's only got a 2-inch
it's only
bottom.
2-inch bottom to it. But that's still a fairly decent bag, size-wise. Okay, so then they take you through the instructions here, and the first thing is you hoop up your stabilizer and you have the machine stitch out the placement line. Actually, what they do is they put 2 steps into one, I've noticed on this. Some patterns you put in your stabilizer and then it sews what they call the placement line, so you know where to lay down your batting for that stage. This one says put your stabilizer in the hoop, lay your batting down on top of that, so you're floating your batting. You're not putting the batting, actually clamping it down in the hoop. The only thing that's being clamped in the hoop is your stabilizer, and then it'll do the placement line. Either way works. I've already done the center panel, so I'll show you that in a minute, but I just went ahead and did that first one as a placement line, and then I put in my batting, and then I went back to that line again. I stepped back and let it do the same thing, so it was a tack down. Probably didn't have to. it wouldn't have made any difference, really. It was just I was used to that in other patterns, so I didn't really read on what they were doing. Then you take it out and you're going to trim your batting up close to that tack down line, placement stitch. Now they do say it's optional to do that. If you don't mind having your batting in your seam allowance, they say skip it. But then at the end of the instructions, after you've got the whole piece sewn out, I notice they say now is the time, if you didn't do it in step 1, to trim out the excess batting from your seam allowances. Well, that seems to me to be an extra step that it's easier. If you don't want that stuff in your seam allowance, do it right at the beginning. Trim it, like I just said, take your hoop off. Don't take the hoop apart. Take it out, trim it with your applique scissors, and then put it back in. If you do it at the end of it, it's going to be more cumbersome trying to get that out without cutting into your satin stitches and some of the others. So, I mean, I don't leave batting in the seam allowance because it makes your seams really bulky and can distort the look of the bag depending on how thick it gets. So I just trim it right at this point here, and you'll see that next week. They give you a nice diagram here with this, and usually sweep piece instructions are fairly clearly written with a picture of each step of the way. That's why you may find it may put you a little off when you first download the PDF instructions for this. It might be 50 pages long. Well, the reason it's 50 pages long is because, well, you can see they put a diagram in with each step throughout. So that's what does it. Now, you could watch it off your pad or off your computer if you wanted. I prefer to look at a printed copy. So here they have a diagram as to where the satin stitches and the quilting stitches are going to go. That's a guide for you in terms of color selection. They do not tell you what colors to use because it's going to depend on what fabrics you decided to use in this. So you could have a different color thread in each one of these. As you'll see in my little sample piece, I didn't. I did one color in all of the panels, and it was black that I used. And I think that worked out pretty good. Also, it meant I didn't have to do 1,000 different color changes for this. And the satin stitches are basically what goes over top of the seams of where all of these pieces meet up with each other, and it covers them up. Also, you can see they're quite decorative as well. And again, the color choices are up to you. And then it goes on and it shows you the whole method. And once you've done a couple of pieces of fabric, well, you're flying because it's the same throughout. Basically, it lays down a placement line. You put a piece of fabric over top of the placement line. It does a tack down stitch. You trim around the fabric. You move on to the next placement line, put your fabric on, trim it. However, I do want you to notice something here. When you get up here where there's the edges at the top and on the sides, the bottom and the other side, you want to leave excess fabric like they have done right here. At least 1/2 inch, if not a little bit more. Yes, it's going to look messy in your hoop, but you are going to trim this later. But the reason you do that is because when you're finished this piece and all the pieces, you're going to be trimming away the no-show mesh stabilizer, the batting you've already trimmed out, and the fabric itself, that overhang, to 1/2 inch. That's going to become your seam allowance. That's going to get buried in the seam when you put the pieces together. Be careful that you don't get mixed up on that. And I have, and I'm going to show you in a minute, but I'm not worried about it.
So on the edges of the outline, you should leave a little extra, right?
Leave at least 1/2 inch of fabric, if not a little bit more.
Yeah, okay.
You're going to be coming back and you're going to be trimming that 1/2 inch away from that line you see right here, that you'll see all the way around. Again, that will be in when we get to the assembly of the bag, and that will show you what that is. So that's all they're doing all through this. And again, it's up to you what you want to use for your fabrics. It's telling you fabric E, fabric F, fabric G. If it makes it easier for you when you're picking your fabrics, you may want to pre-designate right here in your chart. You know, my fabric A is my blue polka dot, my fabric B is my green stripe, my fabric C, etc. And write that in for yourself. And to be consistent, because you'll notice you have the same fabrics in the left and the right panels. And that will probably be important later because, or maybe not. Yeah, it doesn't look like it's going to matter in this one. You don't have to match up the colors. This is the seam here, this centerpiece, and this is the left panel, the right panel, and you're not matching these up. So you don't have to have the same color, even though they may call this piece A and this piece is A, but they're two different colors. It's up to you how you want to do it. I'm actually not going to write down which fabrics I'm using. I'm doing it as I go along, what I think looks good at that moment in time. Okay, so that takes you all through that. And when you are done, you have this big mass here all over the hoop. Doesn't look like a bag. You take it out of the hoop and it says remove your work from the hoop, trim the seams to about a half an inch. And what they say is they show you here, and it's not very clear, there is a seam, a stitch line that runs down here and all the way around the perimeter. And you just use a ruler and cut it off at half an inch away from that line when you trim it all the way around. Now, what they're not showing you here is about trimming your interfacing or your stabilizer. And most patterns do want you to do that. I don't know why this one didn't say to do it. It wouldn't hurt if you left it in the seam allowance because it's not very thick. But I'm used to trimming it out, so that's what I did. And I have a special ruler for that you'll see me use called Trimmer by George. Walter has one too. So this is what your first piece is going to look like. And as it said in the instructions, you have to make 2 of these. Now, do you need to use the same fabrics in the front and the back? No. Totally up to you. I probably will. But if you want to mix it up, you can mix it up. It's totally up to you, your decisions. And then the rest of the pattern is the same. Here's the next panel. You have to make 2 of these. It's showing you what the quilting design is going to look like in that. And the whole pattern goes through that. And then you get to the other right one, you're making 2 of those. And then you come to the assembly and it tells you how to join them together. And we will do this on camera to show you how that all works out. And then after you've got them all of those joined together, then you work on the bottom. The bottom is not done in the hoop. And they show you how to do that. In fact, they're showing you here that they're using, it looks like a faux leather or a vinyl on here as well. You can use whatever you want for the bottom. And then you have to make the lining. So this part of the whole process is no longer in the hoop. It's done on your sewing machine, but it is not difficult. If you can sew straight lines with a 1/2 inch seam allowance or 1/4 inch, you're fine. It's no big deal. Easy, easy. And then from here, it's sort of like the conventional, if you've ever made a regular tote bag, the same thing with boxing your corners, and they show you a method for it. This is not the method that I use. I have a special ruler for this, but I'll show you how I do it. But it's not difficult. And they have diagrams, as I said, to help you through it all. What are they doing here? Oh, they're just showing you how to put the lining in and how to make your handles. Now, you can make your handles, or if you've got webbing, nylon webbing, I have all kinds of it in different colors. I like to use that for my handles. I am, though, thinking of doing something that I saw done on Adam Sews. In his bags, he uses the nylon webbing strapping, but what he does is he covers them with the fabric that he wants to use to coordinate with the bag he's making. And you've got nice strong handles, but you've got ones that have, more of a pattern to them because you've used patterned fabric with them. So I might try that method with this. They don't talk about that here. They do the handles in the traditional way when you're making a bag. And then they talk about top stitching it all. And then they do have the optional if you want to put a snap in. And then your final bag will look something like that. I think leather handles would look very nice on this bag. And that looks like what they may have done in this picture, although they were showing you how to make them using quilting cotton. I think that's the last page. Yeah. So that's the instructions. As I said, there's really no extra materials that they're recommending you buy. They did have a couple of optional fusible stuff. I don't think you need it, but if you have some laying around and you want to use it, then you can. That's up to you. I may or may not use soft and stable in the bag bottom. I don't know yet. Wait till we see what the faux leather is like. And any questions? Anything that you're not sure on? You sat there like a lump. But yeah, we'll get Walter doing this stuff too on maybe some video. And we may come across some problems or make some oopsies. If we make some oopsies, we'll show you how we correct them. But what I want to show you right now, and if I could get Walter to hand me my piece that I already sewed up there. You can get your old body out of the chair.
Wild piece.
I'm not being subtle in mine, but have I ever?
It's a bag you'll never lose.
Yeah, but there you go. This is sort of my color scheme. I've got, and you'll see the fabrics in a minute. I'm pulling from a lot of different fabrics for this. So this may not be, my side panels may be more wild colors. I don't know. But you notice my quilting on this, I did them all in black. I did it all the same. Because I'm lazy. With all this many different colors, I didn't want to pick other colors, contrasting colors or whatever for this. So I thought black would look fine with it. And you can see how I've trimmed it around 1/2 inch. And you see the guideline, the white line that's going around. So I've trimmed it 1/2 inch around like it asked for. What's the back look like? Like that. And that's with no show mesh. That's why I'm saying if you want to use a tearaway, you probably could, because this is so densely quilted that tearaway is not going to go anywhere, and it may give your piece a little bit more substance. Oh, this isn't that limp. Feel that? Is that limp?
No, actually, it feels pretty good.
And that's just with no
Yeah,
show
it would
mesh.
make a nice bag.
Now I want to show you an oopsie. When I was trimming it, I didn't put enough fabric over the edge here. And so you see the white piece? Where's my finger? This piece right here. That's the stabilizer. Am I worried about it? No, because that's going to get buried in the seam allowance, and it is a woven stabilizer. You can sew in it. So if that happens to you, and it probably will, because it gets confusing when it's sitting in the hoop and you got to go, oh wait, that'll be an outside edge. And I just trimmed off the fabric when I was at that point and realized after the fact, ooh, I shouldn't have done that. But it's okay. There's something there to hang on to when I stitch it. So I'm not going to worry about that. If it really bothered me, if it say this was a really long section, like down here on the side, I might put another piece of fabric over where I last did that piece and just do the thing over on top of it again, and that would work too. But this one, I don't need to worry about that. So yeah, you will have oopsies. Don't worry. You can usually get around them. All right. So what have we got picked for our fabrics? Well, let me get this up on the screen for you. Okay. We'll start with my fabrics. Now, there are more fabrics than I need for this project here. And I'm drawing from a bunch of different bundles of fabric that I have in my stash. I have used some of the ones in the top squares up here, and I used a couple down here as well. I'm just mixing and matching. I'm not that worried about it. And I like things bold and bright. I mean, if you're going to put all this effort into a tote bag, you want to yell out at people, look, see my tote bag? See it, see it, see it? Is it blinding you? I hope so. Walter, on the other hand, oops, that's not Walter. Where's Walter?
Yes.
Wait, that's Walter. There. Walter's being more subtle. So tell us about your choices.
I just went with, I like blues and grays and stuff like that. I'm not usually too much into tans, but I thought I'd maybe throw a couple in there as well because the sample sort of had them in there. And just I'm not sure if I'm going to use all the colors. I'm just going to see myself as to what colors will get incorporated in it. So
Now, if you want, as I said earlier, it says fabric A, fabric B, you could list exactly which fabrics you want
yeah.
to use. You know, if you want to, because you've got a certain idea in your head, or you're making this for a gift for somebody and they have a certain colors they absolutely love and that's what you want to use, you can do that. There's nothing saying you can't. It's all up to you. I tend to like to grab whatever I've got laying around and go with it in one of these projects. Uh, this is a great way to, you may have some old fat quarter bundles that at the time you bought them, you thought, oh, this would be great, and you've never done anything with them. Well, they're no good to you if they're sitting in a corner. So grab one. Use some of those fabrics with it, or maybe you collected a lot of fat quarters. I used to do that all the time. I'd go into a store and I'd buy like 10 fat quarters just because they were pretty, and now I have drawers of fat quarters that I've never used. Well, you can do that too. It's really totally up to you. So speaking of that, let's take a look at what Nancy sent me pictures of, what she did. Okay, come on. So here is one version of the bag. Now she used, I'm not sure, I think that's a canvas. I think she mentioned that's a canvas she used in the bag bottom.
Oh yeah, okay, that looks like a canvas, yeah.
Yeah, and she used the same thing in the straps, coordinated those. And she used this color scheme, and you'll notice that all her colors coordinate. They're in the same family of colors. And it looks like she primarily, well, no, she looks like she used a light colored thread on the darker fabrics for the quilting, and a dark colored thread on the light fabrics. So, and her quilting is showing up very nicely with it. And you get a little hint of what she's put on the inside. And then she did this one. Totally different look.
Mm-hmm.
This one's got a very elegant look to it, I think, in the browns and the tans and the sort of autumn colors to a point. And it looks like she used a faux leather.
Yeah.
In this one as well. She's been making a lot of these particular bags because she's been giving them as gifts to family and to friends, and her plan is to make a bunch of these as Christmas gifts as well. And they do take a little bit of time, but once you've got one down, the next one's going to take you less time, especially once you figured out what you want to use for your fabrics and that. I really do like this color scheme that she's used. I think it does look very, very elegant with it. So yeah, so well done, Nancy. Very nice. Well, I'd seen them before and I asked her to send me the pictures because I thought she did a wonderful job on these. Okay, so next week what we're going to do is we're going to stitch out the center panel, and I will do that in advance and make it an edited video, so you don't have to sit through and watch it all. You might wonder how long this bag's going to take you to make. Well, the center panel one takes about 92 minutes according to my embroidery machine, but that doesn't count trimming fabric, that doesn't count color changes. So you might as well say it's going to take you a couple of hours to do the center panel, and you have to make 2 of those. It probably will take a little less time to do both the right and the left panels, but you've got 2 of each of those too. So this is not a bag you're going to make in a day. Okay, because after you get the panels done, you got to sew them all together. You got to put the bottom on. You got to make the lining. You got to get the lining in the bag. You got to do the top stitch. You got to make your handles. Yeah. So none of these projects are done in a day. Okay, this is not quilt in a day, and I question that as well. So it does take a little bit of planning. Okay, and be prepared to spend some time doing this. Okay, so next week I'm going to show you how you set up your machine, how you stitch out the center panel and everything like that, and do the trimming and all that good stuff. But before we go, we had a couple of comments that I want to address. They were actually questions. Carol Sews right, I don't have an embroidery machine, so it was very interesting to watch you make the gnome. She's talking about the gnome Valentine's wall hanger. I have a couple of questions. You kept showing the sewing of placement lines. I'm wondering if those lines always stitch in the exact location as the previous layer lines, and if they are exact, is that because your layers are not being removed from the hoop as you progress through the layers? I'm not really sure what that question is asking. I'm wondering if those lines always stitch in the exact location as the previous layers lines.
There aren't any layers.
There aren't really any layers, but maybe what she means is, is it the same line and you just move the fabric? No, I don't know. I'm confused.
Yeah, I don't quite understand what she means by layers, because there isn't really any layers.
No, these are not layers. This is a single layer of fabric.
Right.
You're not overlaying fabric. The only time the fabric overlays is for seam allowance. And that's usually done underneath a satin stitch.
Your stitching line comes up, and it's to go around that particular piece that you're putting in.
Yeah.
And then, like in here, you would put your middle piece in, and then you'd trim around the edges, and then it would do another line for a different piece.
Yeah.
And then you would put that piece in, but they don't stack on top of each other.
No. And she wants to know if they're always in the exact same place. Well, no.
No, they're different places depending on what piece you're using.
Yeah. So I'm sorry, Carol, if we're being obtuse about this, but we really didn't understand your question. So maybe if we haven't answered it, maybe you can rewrite the question.
Well, she said she doesn't have an embroidery machine,
so that
she
may be
doesn't
why.
really understand
how
these pieces go together.
Yeah, well, that could be. So yeah, there's no layering on this. Unless you're referring to when we did the flowers for the kindred creatures. But those aren't layered. They're separate freestanding applique pieces, and you just sew them on top by hand or by machine with that.
Regular sewing machine.
Yeah, so in a sense, those are layers, but they're
I don't know. I don't
embellishments.
She seems to be confused as to maybe she's talking about, like, you know how you have do a standard embroidery pattern.
You mean like a hand embroidery pattern?
No, like when you're doing let's say you're doing a quilted gnome or whatever.
Yeah.
I don't know.
You mean when you're just doing
you're on that one that you sample that you have. You've got the gnome with the heart in the middle.
Yeah.
And the two hands.
Yeah.
Right? On either side. The two hands are separate items. They're not on top of the heart, are they?
No.
Okay, no.
No, okay. What happens with that? Let me grab this so you can see what we're talking about here. These look like they might be layered, okay, if that's what you're talking about, but they're not. What happens is the placement line goes down, and first of all, it did the hat, but the placement line goes all the way around the outside of the hat, but then it comes up over this part. This is a different part. So you lay down the fabric, this tack down stitch happens, you trim it, but it has left a space for you for this next piece, and I'll draw another or stitch another placement line. You lay your fabric down there, tack down line comes on, you trim it up to the tack down line, etc. That's how the pieces are. So technically speaking, it may look like these little hands are on top of the heart piece. They are not. When the stitching line went for the heart, it went like this. It went around, and then it went around there. And it went around here. It left a space for the hands. Okay, so they're not really on top of each other. There's no layers. It's all a single layer. I hope that explains it. And then this satin stitch comes in and just does the satin stitch all the way around. Because
Yeah, so the stitches are all only there for each specific piece.
yeah. So yeah, I don't know if that answered your question or not, but
Because she is clearly confused.
yeah, but you don't have a embroidery machine, so I could
So
see how
yeah.
you'd be confused about that. Um, and then the other question Carol asked um, is it difficult to cut away batting and fabric while they are stretched out on the hoop? No, that's why you use these special scissors we were talking about earlier with the curves in them. It's actually very easy because a trick, and you'll see
Oh, well,
this.
see, they aren't your fabric pieces aren't stretched through your hoop,
No,
right? They're laying on top.
they're floated.
They're
They're
laying
just,
on top of it. Yeah.
and the only thing holding them down is a stitch lying around. The hoop is not holding them.
No, so it'll be free. You just lift it up and trim around each
Yeah,
edges.
yeah.
So
And
they're not actually attached inside the hoop.
no, they're not. The hoop isn't holding them down. They're just stitched down, and then when you trim up to start up to the edge of the stitching line around there, grab that piece of fabric and just hold it a little bit taut, not too taut, and you just around it. And what happens is when you're holding it that way, your scissors actually go up fairly close to the stitch line, the tack down line, and without cutting it, it trims it really close to that. So when the satin stitch comes along, it buries the edges of the fabric in there as well. It encases it, I guess might be another word for it. Okay, I don't know if we made you more confused or not. We know what we're talking about. Okay, so this comes from the new Quilting Life with Janice. Hello, Stephen. Question, it may be stupid, I don't know. But those patterns that you're doing, can you make them in a bag and be able to sell those bags even if the designs are not yours? Looking to make crafts for a flea market. Okay, I looked into this. I did answer this earlier, and I said, well, you'd have to check with the company that you got it from because they have licensing things. So on the bag from Sweet Pea, I went in and checked their policies, and this directly quoting from their uh, general information. It says, all designs remain the property of Sweet Pea Machine Embroidery. They may not be copied or reproduced in any way. The design files may not be sold or shared. The finished articles made with our designs may be sold. So what they're saying is, and I think this is how most of the companies work. Yeah, if these final bags that we're making, if we decided we wanted to sell them at a craft fair or something, we can. We cannot sell the file that went into the embroidery machine that we bought. We cannot sell that, and we are not supposed to copy it and give it to somebody else. So, for example, if you bought one of their files and a friend said, oh, I really like that, and you said, oh, well, I'll copy it for you and put it on a USB, and away you go with it. And we know people do that. But technically speaking, according to Sweet Pea and other companies too, they're all about the same. You're not supposed to do that. But the final product you have created with those files, you are free to sell them if you wish. So I hope that clarifies that for you, Janice. Patricia Lancaster 8584 says, thanks for the demo. I don't have an embroidery machine, so wonder so wonder just hours you used it for your projects. I think she meant how you used it. So I wondered just how you used it for your project. So I think what I thought it originally she wanted to know how long it was going to take when word hours, but now when I read it again, I realize no, I think she just is saying she didn't know how these worked, and so now she does because we showed her because she doesn't have one. So there you go. All right. So that's the comments from last week's. If you have comments about this week's, please put them in the comment section below and we'll address them next week. And next week, as I said, we're going to stitch out the center panel and talk about how that all works then. Okay, I think that's it. Anything else you want to say?
Nope.
Anything exciting coming up in your life that you want people to know about?
Nope.
Major awards, accolades, projects, money, trips? No, okay, never mind. Well, you can just go away then. Okay, so with that, we'll see you next week. Bye for now.
Bye for now.